Hello, and what's going on? This is Tony Smario. It's August 18th, 2016, from my father, BroSal.org YouTube channel. I want to talk about what's going on because I've been sitting here reflecting on all of the aspects. I know that there's a small amount of people that listen to me regularly who are used to my story, and then there's the odd person who might hear this, who really doesn't know. And the uniqueness of what we have to say has struck me recently as I'm trying to put together what to say every week to this small group of people that is following and the larger group of people that's being introduced. And I think we're all asking, what's going on? Why is the world the way it is? And you know, I'm in a position in my life where I do a lot of research. I spend a lot of time watching sifting, and I have for a few years now, sifting through all these different topics through the YouTube channels like mine. Well, there's very few like mine. I'm almost invisible. The YouTube channels, anybody that might have any number of subscribers, but most of them that come up on those pages under these topics, have thousands of subscribers, many times tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands. And I tend to shy away. I've learned, as I've gone through this, that the more subscribers they have, the more they sound like a controlled opposition of some kind or another, like Alex Jones on InfoWars. He's one of the first people I found several years ago, like so many. See, but instead of becoming a follower, I was applying a knowledge that Dad and I have been studying for 35 years. I've been reading the scripture for 35 years. Most of those simply misunderstanding or making everything I was learning fit a pattern that I see has been manipulated, just like our government's been manipulated. We say we run by the Constitution, but that's not how, you can't put our current government into any sort of form that looks like the Constitution, except, in lip service. They say that the Constitution is what is behind us, but it's way behind us. And now we have this, sort of fascist state, if you want to get technical, oligarchical, aristocratical, fascist type of rule. And it's not so much different than what the Founding Fathers did. I mean, they weren't fascists, but they didn't want slaves and women to make the decisions. They didn't want poor, tramps to make the decisions. They wanted to make sure that they always were free to do what they wanted. They were just much better people because most of the Founding Fathers, as apart from the Pilgrims, who were real, Puritans mostly, real Christians that lived on minimal. I mean, most Christians today would die to try and live like a Quaker Puritan life, but that's who founded America. That's who came. They didn't found America. There's millions of people living here. They left Europe for anything better than that system. And I propose to you that system is what we have today. In the same sort of thing that they left to get away from. But those were Christians. And they were the kind of Christians that you don't see. I'm not that kind of Christian. No, there are no Christians anymore. Like I say, a few Quakers, people that truly take it seriously, that to deny yourself in this life, to work and, have a different ethic, a whole different game plan, a whole different vision of reality, is actually to be closer to God. That's what they think. And I don't see how you can read the New Testament, especially the Gospels, if they record what Jesus of Nazareth taught. His teaching's far more radical than the Quakers. who sort of isolate themselves from the world. Not that you can blame them. That's the first church went underground. I mean, think about it, you guys. Nero started persecuting the church in, like, what was it, 130, 150, whatever it was. And he was torturing I mean, if you were a Christian, you had to, that's what you had to face if they came for you and you admitted to being a Christian. He was killing them, and they had to go underground into caves and have secret signs and handshakes, just like the Masons do. That's how the early church was. They had to hide. The fact that that became the power, that Jesus came out of the caves and became the acceptable power in the world, is the great miracle that Augustine pointed to. And it's the only thing about Augustine, I mean, he seemed to be really, I like the Confessions, and he admits to being just a fornicating normal guy. But his conclusions in the end that are so Calvinistic in their, type, they're the predecessor of Calvinism, that people are just, destined to go to hell. There's only so many. Lord, if the Lord doesn't call you, well, then he sentenced you to hell already. And that whole predestination and idea, Augustine planted the seeds of all that. But he was still a very honest guy, admitting that what kind of guy he was. But the thing that he pointed to, the idea that it was prophesied that this would, take over the world, save the world. And when he looked back and saw what these original Christians went through, the persecution, hiding in caves to get the story, that's how much they believed it. I'm a believer, praise Jesus. What are you going to say when they come and take everything from you and say, we're going to start slaughtering your family one at a time? We'll start with your youngest, and we'll work your way up to your wife or husband, and then we'll slaughter you. So tell me again about your Christianity. How many real Christians are there? Well, the early church apparently was that way. So you have to wonder, what they see? What was it that happened in the world that created this? And so that's, I think, what Augustine points back to, that the miracle that this became something that in his time was already, starting to be the beginnings of the Holy Roman Empire and ruling the world, of the known world. I mean, already was becoming the ruling entity. Now, probably there's historians that might point out that it was all used for the people that were in power to just like the Christians of today in America. You put the name on of Christianity to continue the policies you were under, so that the people that were within your realm could call themselves Christians and follow your policies. I'm not sure of my history, Roman history and Christian history, all the way back to its beginnings there. But you can tell some weird things were done in Nicaea and these other councils where, certainly not the pure vision that Jesus of Nazareth, the Messiah of the temple, of the Jews, the ending of the law, the consummation of the law, that wasn't what was carried on. December 25th, I mean, everybody knows all these pagan holidays, the sun worship traditions that got introduced, and those are introduced way back then. So, what's going on in the world, and why can't, most of the interaction I have with people on the internet when I'm watching these things, I would say 80% of the things I respond to are ignorant Christians who are either ready to go to war, blame Islam, all that angle. They're not looking at Christianity the way the first church did. They don't represent that at all. I mean, it's absolutely the opposite. The first church represented giving everything, not just doing it because it was required, like the Church of Scientology or something, where if you don't pay a fortune and give everything, you'll be, wow, how can anyone even, it shows you the power of indoctrination and brainwashing. And so if you know your history of the United States since World War II, it's all been about brainwashing. you know, MK Ultra and all these things. If you think that's just conspiracy theory, you simply haven't seen the research. You haven't listened to the people who have done the homework. You've listened to the people who just report it in the news or write books about it that are published by the publishing companies that are owned by the, you know, the same people who gave you your world you have today. And just because the world is in the state it's in today, I think this is why we have to ask ourselves, okay, who's been lying to me? Why is it that we know that some people seem to know so absolutely that there's plenty of resources and people could be fed and housed, and, you know, the hoarding of resources, all these things that can be shown to be going on, the funneling of wealth ever into smaller and smaller groups of people. I mean, who cares if it's the law? It means the law needs to be changed. I mean, obviously. And so then the people come out of the closet. You can't take someone's wealth and give it away. That's not freedom. No, that's not freedom. But it was neither, was it freedom to allow a system in which all of the wealth could be amassed in one person's or one small group's circle against the population? No one ever wanted that except the people in the small circle. So you can't establish that that was a pre-existing psychological condition except through this, you know, immoral or amoral condition, which is why that's where psychology comes in. That's why it argues for immoral and amoral reality. Nietzsche, there is no God. I mean, you need that, don't you, if you're going to support this immoral, amoral stance. If you're going to make the world materialistic, if you're going to make money the measure of all things, if you're going to make death the absolute end. I mean, think about it. That's not how history came to us. That's not what people believed. Even all this symbology and BS that we get from all these prostitute mouthpieces on the internet. Oh, Illuminati, Illuminati. I got to tell you, folks, I've been looking at this, and just even recently I've been convinced at the depth and the importance of all this symbology. But I'm really more and more convinced now that the importance is as illusion and distraction. That's what magic is. Magic is Hollywood, right? Hollywood, if you know, the old Druids in England, the magicians 1,000 years ago, approximately, used the wood from holly trees to make their magic wands, to cast their magic spells. And if you don't think any of that stuff exists, what's really weird is, why does God tell them that the big problem is they worship other gods, that there's these evil spirits that people ignorantly worship as gods, that there's this Hades? Even Isaiah was able to be raised up by his own admission in the scripture by King Saul. You know, there's this other realm, this is a spiritual realm. The whole story is supposed to be about these spiritual creatures that fell and gave the secrets of heaven to man. I mean, that's the myth. So, you know, I've given people, or tried to, and I'll do another one of these about the metaphysics of love and how I imagine there's a real metaphysical explanation that undermines this religious incongruity. This Zeus sitting on a cloud, judging everybody, interfering, being so interested in human life, versus the idea of a Brahman that's just existing through people. You know, and I say that the evidence demonstrates the paradox of the both happening at once, so that our freedom remains. Because, of course, in the Brahminic system, there's no freedom, really, for just an imaginative existence, or we're just the physical existence of something being demonstrated, its own reality through us. Then we are what we were intended to be without any choices of our own being able to alter that. And very much that's what Calvin determined for the Christians as a lawyer in the 16th century, if I'm right, that 90% of humanity, according to the scriptures, is damned before birth. Nothing you can do for them. You can't save them. You can't help them. You can't educate them. That's just the way it is. That's how God is doing it. He's going to create the whole world to get these few gems out of it that he will call for himself. The rest of you are fodder. You're just there to die and apparently be burned in hell forever. And so when you have a mindset like that, imagine the sort of irrational and, I don't know, stone cold reality you can maintain. Zero passion, zero tolerance, right? Scientific purity. It either is good enough, your genes are either good enough or sorry, we are so humane and moral on this end that we don't kill you in a bad way, we kill you in the best possible way that we can think of. That kind of eugenic utopia has been imagined for a long time. And it's not very hard to pull the strings, to see the string pullers behind the scenes, to lift the dress, to open the curtain of Oz, and realize that these people, come through either feeling that they're spiritually superior or biologically superior. And that their eugenic program of vaccinating, sterilizing, and extinguishing the lesser races, the less desirable elements. I mean, that's all, they don't tell you that, guys. They keep you distracted, and that's what I'll end with on this first one. These sites, like I just unsubscribed to Illuminati Watcher, even though I really like his presentation. And I think he might even be sincere. But he's so lost in watching these pop stars and interpreting these Super Bowl ceremonies of occultist symbology, that it doesn't lead beyond that. It's simply to keep you caught up in paying attention to that. And, for all those that are paying, because these are the guys who get hundreds of thousands of hits on everything, and, and I don't care, man. I really believe in God. I really think that it's a spiritual thing, and I see how much benefit I get from being under the radar. We don't ask for any money. I don't care if I get 1 million hits. I'm not tagging that thing for YouTube to send me money. I'm not doing it. That's the whole point. I'm committed to my spiritual battle. And I don't see much of that out there. And the Christians are the worst. And even when they're sincere, they're sometimes even worse because they're so misled. So anyway, I keep trying to make some sort of appeal to people to start paying attention to this channel, because we have a pretty unique perspective that combines the eschatological view with a realistic view, with a metaphysical view, with a historical view. We've been watching it for 35 years. Thank you for the few people that speak up and on our broadcasts and tell others how much you think we're on the money. I really appreciate that. Even though all these idiots have got thousands of people doing that, it's nice when you've got somebody acknowledging what they've seen and what they've learned. And so I don't know how else to get people into paying some attention to the right thing. And I think the right thing is not just war, it's depopulation through natural disasters and diseases. Then they look like the good guys. That's why they keep promoting this Illuminati, and they're going to turn everybody into transhumans, and they're going to put everybody in FEMA camps. And I don't believe that. That's very expensive. And all these people could break out of the camps, and then they really want to kill you. So it's not very Machiavellian either. But to make them love their slavery and confinement, and then beg you to help them when they're dying at your hands, that sounds a little more Illuminati if you're going to get on that level. If I'm smart enough to think about it that way, I imagine these guys have been planning their counterintelligence for a long time. And I think it's pretty easy to see that people like Timothy Leary, people like L. Ron Hubbard, these kind of people are counterintelligence. Billy Graham, they're put out there to get the world to where it is now because people were free-thinking human beings that could side with their neighbor and say, hey, man, is this right? That ain't right. Come on. And the next neighbor, that ain't right. Pretty soon the whole community's arm in arm. It's hard to just roll. You can't just go and shoot everybody. I mean, because then the next neighborhoods around them are really going to get mad. And so you do it subtly, if there's any eschatological reality to the subtle one, as the devil, the evil is called. It comes subtly. And so they make it obvious. Even the false flag hoaxes are obvious. Even their botched, not their botched, but their obvious, conspiratorial assassinations, Kennedy, and, it's so obvious. Martin Luther King and these guys, the Waco, Texas, all these things, if you do any study, it's obvious they're botched. So they know it's going to come out, but that's a sense of control. The people refuse to believe it. That shows you the Aldous Huxley control, that they will love their slavery. And so it's like telling the slave, here, I want to open the door for you and let you out, and say, man, I ain't a slave. You're in a cage. This ain't a cage. So I don't know. That's what's really going on. And if you want to listen to me, I'm going to try and do this little series maybe to just talk to you about what's really going on behind all the different aspects, this Mandela effect, what's really going on. I mean, I got a Bible. The old King James Version says bottles now instead of wineskins. Says charity instead of love. In Paul's speech in 1 Corinthians, if I have not love, I am nothing. Now it says charity in the King James Version. In my Aramaic, from the Eastern text, the ancient Eastern text, it still says wineskins and it still says love. That's a very interesting thing to me in this whole, Mandela effect concept. And people who don't want to pay any attention to that I think are, simply just haven't been affected as I suddenly have. I've been reading the Bible for 35 years. It said wineskins. How else? Where did I learn the word wineskins as a teenager? Who knows about wineskins? I'd heard of a Boda bag, and I remember thinking, is that the same as a Boda bag? Wineskins, what is that? So now it says bottles, and that the bottles won't burst. Do bottles burst? So the cork might pop out, but anyway, I think and love. I've been reading that ever since to me that's been one of my favorite passages all my life that hooked me into the deeper emotional side of Christianity, what Paul's saying there. Doesn't matter what you do or give. It just doesn't matter if you don't find that love. It all comes to nothing. I mean, what a brilliant concept. And they've turned that to charity, which is within love, but it's smaller than love that Paul's talking about, in my view, which is an ability to let go of yourself, to see somehow that others are as valuable as you, they're as lovable as you, that you care for somebody else as much as you care for yourself. That's not necessarily charity, but charity obviously comes out of that. Anyway, thanks for listening. If you want to hear more, please subscribe, come to the website. We've got a lot of different stuff over there. And just understand, if you don't listen to the rapture stuff, when I was given the Bible insights, I still believed in a rapture. And now I've gone through a little series to demonstrate there's no scriptural evidence that that's more of the programming that I was under for, 30-something years. So thanks for being here. Talk to you soon.